This might be a top 5 most important punk rock album of all time. And I would say of our era, say like 1990 through 2010, it is the most important punk rock record. What's up, everybody? How you doing? Welcome back to the Punk Rock Review Podcast. On this episode, I'm hanging out with Rob. Man, first and foremost, how you doing today, Rob? How's your day going?
Doing good, man. I've been sitting here, been kind of busy, been absorbing a lot of what we're going to talk about today, as we just talked about right before we opened the mic. It's been a heavy week of music listening to very specific things. Like I'm not having a big palette. I've just been listening to a couple of things. It's been kind of fun, but I'm ready to break out and broaden my horizons a little bit after we talk.
Right. Yeah, we got some interesting stuff to talk about just in general and in like respect to next week. So thank you for everybody that's hanging out with us. If you're here on Spotify and you're not watching it, thank you so much, man. The Spotify channel is starting to grow a little bit. I think we hit 150 official downloads, which I thought was pretty great. It's not a giant number, but compared to 0, I think it's significant. And I've only been doing it for like 6 weeks. So I feel like that's pretty solid for 6 weeks.
It's hard to find podcasts too, so like that speaks really well. And thank you for that. Like, gives us validation that I think we're doing something right. We aim for this to be a podcast. You can see it, but we're aiming for it. You can hear it, and you're gonna get hopefully the same experience.
And we've worked really hard at making it to where we don't talk over each other. For one, and for two, that we put a little bit of effort into making it enjoyable for a sole listener, not a viewer necessarily. I'll occasionally break out something and show the audience on YouTube, but I want to make it enjoyable for people that are like driving or jogging, riding a bike, whatever. So, but tonight we're going to talk about a couple of things. We're going to very lightly touch on the new Sum 41 record, Heaven and Hell. It just dropped last Friday. But the bulk of this episode, we're talking about an iconic punk rock record. We're going to talk about the Offspring's Smash. It's hitting its 30th anniversary. Good grief, dude. Hold on, man. That's wild. It's hitting its 30th anniversary, I think, next week. On Monday. So like in a couple of days, almost a week from today, it's going to be turning 30 years old. And so I have a bold proclamation here. I think that this might be a top 5 most important punk rock album of all time. And I would say of our era, say like 1990 through 2010, it is the most important punk rock record. Is it the best? Is it the most popular? Is it the most hated? Those are all things we're going to talk about. I think that's super subjective questions. But I think objectively, we are going to talk about why. And we'll probably prove the point that without this record, like our lives would be different. I guarantee it. So, get ready for some hot topics, some hot takes, and likely some things that people will disagree on a little bit. And that's okay. We aim for conversation, if nothing else.
Yeah, and I think like this is one of those topics where it's the ultimate jumping off point for you and I, because as you said, it's one of those things whether it's like Op Ivy or we do Green Day or we do like Bad Religion stuff where its tentacles are so deep that they're fun conversations of building the world that you and I we're a little bit different age, but we kind of came to the same punk rock from the same like kind of source. And this is literally one of those embers, one of those sources that burned and spawned everything else. So and like it's cliche, but these are the discussions that people in punk rock have been having for years, outside of clubs and stuff. And we're doing it now, like in this format.
It's so wild
again, but with hopefully a little bit of a different flair.
As more mature middle-aged men versus snotty young kids, I think that has a lot to do with what our opinion will be. I think when I was 21 years old, my opinion on this record was way different than it is now. I couldn't even listen to bands like the Descendants back then, and look at what I'm talking about now. I just did a track by track of
Cool to Be You.
Cool to Be You, because it just passed 20th.
Love that
So
album, by the way. I got to check that out, man. That's cool.
yeah,
I'm so
yeah,
happy that you did that.
I did a whole track by track, man. I was like, I know we just did a podcast, but I was like, you know what? It deserves some attention, and I've completely flip flopped on the band as of the last, like, let's say 6 weeks or 8 weeks or so,
Mhm.
and I'm okay with that, man. Like, I think people need to be a lot more okay with people's opinions and flavors changing. As a community, I don't think that we're good at that. I think, especially with like the younger group right now, the internet age kids, they're like, no, man, you said that once in 1998. You have to stick with that until you're dead. And it's like, bro, I used to hate a lot of food that I love now. Like, it's such a strange thing. So, last thing before we get onto the topic of actual songs, if you're on Spotify, my apologies. I just want to show this real quick. I finally got my literal chunk of punk rock history, my piece of the wall from, let's see if I can get it to not blur out. There we go. 924 Gilman Street. Came with a certificate of authenticity, but I'm going to make a little display for the back over my shoulder here. But I'm really proud of this because it was $100, right, to like pledge to get this. So I'm glad that I was able to help them. $100 is whatever, man. It's money and it comes and goes. But I was glad that I was able to pledge that my wife allowed it, that my financial stability and maturity allowed it, because when I was in my 20s, ain't no way I could have given somebody $100 for nothing. But I'm glad I was able to help with a project that I found important. I just thought it was pretty neat. So, it took a little while to get here, but I know it really is cool. I think it's actually cool.
Yeah, and
like that's freaking Gilman right there. Like, that's in my house.
Well, and if you know anything about Gilman, what's cool about it is like when they started putting on before they started putting on the punk shows, they had to like get the venue in shape to do what they were doing. So like literally, and I forget which band. There's a band that's known that they knew how to do concrete, so they laid the concrete. Like the kids literally built Gilman into an acceptable venue, one that like the fire department could clear for that. So that really is like punk built history. It's not just a wall that was there. It was a wall that was constructed and created by the people who created a lot of the scene that you and I talk about.
Absolutely, man. I think the symbolism is that at this point in my life, this is a cornerstone, quite literally, in getting me to where I want to be with this channel and my label. I got some really exciting news that I'm going to talk to you off air about. Folks, I promise the news is coming to the channel within a few days, but it's something I can't publicly talk about at the moment. That should make you excited, I think. But yeah, man, let's talk about some music, dude. So Sum 41's album, Heaven and Hell, dropped, and I was a hair away from just completely dismissing it, because the singles, while objectively well written and well recorded, well made, they weren't really hitting me. Like, I just was kind of like, okay, they're all right. I think the first one I actually liked quite a bit, and then the second or third, I can't remember if there was a third, they were real forgettable. And I mean, the fact that I can't even remember if there was a third, that tells you a lot. So, yeah, dude, I listened to it in its entirety like 3 times. That is a long album, dude. So, okay, we talked a minute ago, and you said that you had listened to, I guess I would consider it, chunks of the album. What are your first impressions?
I thought it was kind of like a lot. Like it was all the different flavors of Sum 41 just being thrown at you in different songs. Like it didn't.
Yeah.
And the part of why that thing is, like I said, I was kind of clicking around on it because there was no like continuity to it, or it didn't feel like really an album in that kind of like. There's that song early on where it's like, oh, it was cool. They're doing what they do when they bring in like that metal sound to their riffing and it made it sound really big. Then there was like a super poppy part, like very much after that. And I've always thought Sum 41 is good at blending those things a lot more seamlessly than a lot of other bands to create their own sound. And this felt like a blending of the Sum 41 sounds just kind of sandwiched together. I really wasn't against it. Like the songs in isolation, I thought all sounded pretty good. They sound like, a Sum 41 song you think would sound like in 2024. But it was a lot of like sensory overload with what that album was throwing out there.
Right. I like that description. In isolation, they were all pretty good. And I think I would agree with that for the most part. Ultimately, I don't even want to tell you. Well, I guess it doesn't matter. You'll watch this in this video. But ultimately, I landed on exactly 60% of the songs I thought were good enough to give a thumbs up. I think that they made a huge mistake by listing 20 or dropping 20 songs at an hour. Because if you had done 2 EPs or whatever you can call them, whatever, 2 12-inch records at let's say 10 songs at about 30 minutes, I think that you would please your audience more because people like you and I could go and get the part that we like, because the second half is vastly different, and I don't like much of it. There's a bunch of it that's actively bad. In my opinion, this is subjective me speaking here, not like talking factually. I mean, I don't know. There's some parts in there where I'm just like, bro, what are y'all doing? Because they are really talented musicians, and that is incredibly obvious with this record. I do think that it's an overall positive swan song because my personal take on it is that I liked it better than Blink's new album and Green Day's new album. Now, that's not saying a lot because I'm not a big Green Day fan, and Blink's new album I've kind of famously cooled off on a lot. So by how much, I think it's pretty small margins. I don't think it's any kind of blowout. But I think if I had to just choose one to go to, and they're like, all right, for the next 2 weeks, you have to pick one of these records. That's the only record you can listen to. Man, it would probably be Sum 41, and then I might regret not picking Green Day. But Blink wouldn't even get a thought, I don't think. Man, that record, I've listened to it recently. I thought, you know what? I think I'm crapping on it too much, man. I don't talk about it a lot, but when I do, it's not in a positive way. And I thought, I love that band, dude. So I went back and was like, no, I need to go back and give it another try. I was in the mood for Blink-182, so I put it on. Dude, like 80% of the songs I couldn't even get through. I was just like, ugh, fast forward. Like, it's just not for me. It was meant for somebody else. It was meant for them. You know what I'm saying? It's more of a healing album than it was here we wrote some rock star shit. It wasn't about that. It was like some internal, and I think they needed that. I'm not even complaining, bro. Make it however you want to make it. Maybe the next album will be just insane. I don't know. Wouldn't surprise me a bit. Those guys are incredibly talented. But this new Sum 41 album, while not amazing, I thought was pretty decent, but a lot of errors made on that. Just
full effort though, at least by them in their last album. You know what I mean? Like might as well kind of put it all out there. You know, if this is how you're gonna go out, might as well shoot all your guns. Again, I think you could have presented it a little bit different, as you said. You know, I guess kind of like NoFX is doing is they're unloading a lot of their catalog, but doing it in a little more chunked out. This is the third album, the third kind of drop of those songs. You know,
I was talking to somebody, and that was the exact thing we brought up. I was like, look at NoFX, and I was like, dude, if they're big, Sum 41's a big enough and I would say important enough band to do something like this. You could have had Heaven, Hell released separately. You could even have done it in like I don't know how you could have made it make sense in that kind of terminology, but you could have done like an album and then a deluxe edition, and done like Heaven, Hell. Even if you wanted, you could have either done a release where you drop everything at once and it goes bam, you get one, and a deluxe where you get both, or you could have been like one, wait a few weeks, deluxe edition, while telling people you were going to do that. And I think you would have sold more copies ultimately doing that, because you'd have 3 big spikes in sales. You'd have like, oh shit, I want this record. Oh, I want the second part. Oh, I want the both of it. And you'd have collectors that bought all 3. Like, I mean, I think they missed a major opportunity to like really just sail off into the sunset. Like, see, told you guys, we nailed it. And because I think the dude, an hour long, bro. I don't know how anybody's going to listen to this record like in depth often.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I get what you're saying from like, you know, a purchasing perspective and doing that. I don't know how much bands really care about that anymore, though.
They probably don't, because that's like, just what I like.
Yeah, but because even like I use the streaming services as much as anything. I have my vinyl here that I don't listen to actually that much, but I tend to listen to most stuff like on Spotify. But I still listen to it as albums, and I know that's atypical of like the listener on Spotify. Like I unless like we make something for the show, I don't tend to listen to a lot of playlists. Occasionally, Spotify will start doing its thing or whatever, and it'll take me there.
Right.
But generally, it's like, you know, like this week, hey, I'm going to listen to Smash. So I'm just listening to Smash. And I listen to Smash. And I listen to Smash, and that's kind of, you know, I still approach it in that way, I guess.
You make a good point. I'm viewing it from my perspective, which is 42 years old. I literally have a stash of records sitting right here to my left. I just ordered a brand new brush for my records because I listened to them enough to where I needed a new stylus cleaner and a new brush. So when I look at this stuff, I look at it from the perspective of somebody that's potentially going to spend $25 to say $45 on any kind of vinyl release. So here's my point with this record, they're not going to get a purchase from me at all. Had they split it up, I would absolutely have bought the first half, like for sure. If it was a single 12-inch LP and it had that first half on it, and that was like, oh, this is our first part, even if it was dropped the same day, I might have bought one of each just to have one in my shop, and then one part of the Heaven part for me. Like, you know what I'm saying? So like there's some like purchases that they're not going to get. And while they may not care about that right now, I do believe in the long run, this stuff's going to come back full circle, and they're going to be like, damn, I wish we had focused a little bit more on that, because legacy matters, dude. And legacy is tangible. You can't be like, oh man, like look at all the people that are still talked about in like greatness. The album we're fixing to talk about today, I don't give a crap what punk rock record comes out right now. It will never do the numbers that this record did. And those are physical numbers. Yeah. And so while I do think it's different, and it'll never be that important, but I do think that there's some, I don't know, impression to be made. And I think if you're going to go out like that, you give your fans something tangible to hold in their hands, and you take care to do it, and you do it the right way. That means that your fan, I don't know. To me, I am a money spender, dude. I like nice things. I like expensive, what's the word I'm looking for here? Like merch. And so I want people to take their time. There's a reason why I do what I do with my label. Like I'm fixing to put out something incredible, dude. Like I'm about to spend, you have no idea, bro. You're going to want one of these, dude. This is how cool this shit is. You're going to want one. You, Rob, it's going to be badass. Like I have no doubt in my mind. And so, but I'm also spending a fair amount of money on it. I won't make a ton of profit on it. I don't give a shit, bro. It's going to be so freaking cool. So anyways, man, Heaven and Hell's not a bad record by any stretch of the word. That would be a disservice to the band and their legacy. It's not a bad record. I still think that Does This Look Infected is my favorite one. But solid effort, man. Like this, 30 years in the game? Like,
yeah. They're just about a hair younger than like what we're going to talk about today, but just a hair. Like they broke a little bit later, but basically the same age of, but a band that was definitely inspired and benefited from what we're going to talk about. So
1,000%
perfect in that way.
So without further ado, let's talk about I would say a polarizing band, a band that has been called a lot of things, and I think fits into a lot of categories. The Offspring. Yeah, man, this band has had a lot of faces over the years. As of the last few years, have done some things to really turn me off as a fan. But that being said, this album came out April the 8th, 1994, and it literally changed my life. It changed my opinion on music. It changed the stuff that I liked, the stuff that I wore, the people that I talked to, and the things that I went as far as events. So, yeah, dude. What is your initial thought when somebody brings up this record? Like, what do you think upon the conversation starting? Hey, man, how do you think about Offspring Smash?
So it's so rare over the years, and I thought about this a lot this weekend, that I've ever actually talked about like the songs on Smash. Smash conversations always just lead to everything else. It leads to the explosion of Epitaph. It leads to the split with Epitaph. It leads to the Rancid conversation, the Brett conversation, the Epitaph conversation, the whole idea of pop punk, all of that, what they became later on in America. It kind of leads to all of these things. It's very rare that I've engaged in like a conversation about just the songs of Smash. So it's a topic piece, but it's often more of a jumping off piece. I feel like, and I made a video, one of the first videos that anyone ever watched on my channel was called "The Offspring Get No Respect," and that's exactly how I still, basically feel. Like even myself as a teenager, I always say I thought of them more as kind of an alternative rock band. I was aware of their punk history, and even when I got into punk rock later on, I was aware of their punk history, but I never really thought of them like that. Despite, when you look at their catalog, their music is extremely of the stuff that you and I like. Maybe right. There's a hit or two that veers away from that, but every band has a song or two like that. But they are very much if you and I say like, we like skate punk, we like that kind of that harder edge pop punk. Well, this is about as good of that as it gets. And there's a few reasons for that, but I like to think of Smash as more of like the conversation starter than how we talk about it, which is totally unfair to the record, by the way, because the songs on that album are objectively, I think, very, very good. So
Well,
it's just there's so much around it.
when we did our ranking, I think we both kind of dismissed this record.
Yeah, and I feel like that was a bit of a mischaracterization on my behalf because it was in contrast to Americana because I still do hold that Americana is just a superior record. And so I think because Smash has that legacy that we spoke of, I think that it was worth pointing out that like Americana was better. But like even going back through it, I think I had it number 2 on my list. I just had it so far down because even though Americana was like a bigger record in some sense, in that like it was more like in your home and not exactly Smash sold more, but you get the idea of like
Yeah,
your cousin or stuff knows what Americana is, not necessarily Smash. I do feel
interesting.
like I do like I'll put it up against Splinter and Conspiracy of One or Ignition or Exit. Like I like it objectively better than all of those albums. It just in relation to Americana, I still do think Americana is the superior album.
Huh. After listening to it a few more times, I think I might disagree, but by how much? Again, I think it's very slim margins. I don't want to be like a prick about it. I just think I might favor Smash a little bit more because I'm telling you, dude, I listened to it and I was flabbergasted because I didn't have to listen to their whole discography, so I could focus a lot more of my energy on the
Mm.
one record. And I was like, what was my deal? Sorry, something just I heard a loud noise. That was weird.
Oh,
Anyways,
something made a noise. Something happened.
you heard it too?
Yeah, no, it came through. Yeah.
Uh so my thought was like what was I missing or was I not hearing the last time? Or was it because I was listening to it against other records that I just really enjoy?
Yeah.
And also a lot of it's the time it came out, man. I didn't have a happy high school life, dude. Like I
Well,
liked being a young kid. Had a lot of fun, but I didn't have a happy youth. Like when this album came out and when I was listening to it, I wasn't having a good time. Like I was bullied and poor. You know what I'm saying? So like I don't have a lot of good memories that go like, but with Americana and even Next Day on the Ombre, I kind of do. Like that's when I got a
mm.
little older. I had some freedoms. So like my brain shoots back to this time in my life. And when this record came out, I was not a happy person. I just wasn't. So I think that was part of the issue. So this time I was listening to it just solely on merit of each song.
But and really to get a good analysis of each album, that's sort of the flaw in the comparison because one thing has to come over the other, so you have to sort of explain those reasons. And I think
Right.
that's just typical of that. Um, Man, it's funny you talk about like it being the time period because that's the thing. Smash is very much part of culture too. Like you do, March Madness is happening right now. There is not a game that they don't go and cut away to the commercial that come out and play that the marching band is playing that. Like that this
Oh,
album too.
really?
Yeah, it's very integrated in the Offspring themselves. They're more integrated into pop culture almost than they are instinctively into punk culture.
Oh, no, they definitely are.
Yeah, they just are, and again, and I said it before, like I always associate the Offspring fan that I knew with like the guys that would have like Linkin Park and Sublime and that kind of stuff, and that's like Smash for example. I didn't realize that not all these songs that I knew for years and years on it that I assumed were singles weren't singles. It just and we talk about like the alternative radio station just played a lot of Smash, kind of similar to Nevermind in that way, where it just even the ones that weren't necessarily released, like the radio station, just kind of played
Yeah.
big parts of that. So again, I think of like Offspring almost like I think of like Chumbawamba, who I know has their punk credibility too. But I've always you think of them so much separate from a punk scene, and even when they were on the scene, like in Americana, it's not like how Blink-182 was bringing like the Descendants to you. Like the Offspring wasn't really presented like that. Like even Green Day was
Well,
presented at the mudslinging kids. The Offspring was never really presented like that.
so initially when you had brought up that point, I disagreed with it, but I think I have to backtrack on that and agree with you about the how you associate them
Mm.
because I've done a lot of thinking, man. And I think I just initially got like defensive about it because I like the band and they are a punk band to me, but they're also a pop band. And I think you can simultaneously be both. I think that this whole label thing it makes like super punk type kids really sound just super ignorant, man. Like
Mm.
and I've done it. I've done it. I'm not gonna sit here and act like I haven't. But like, my goodness, dude, like especially with this album, like you go back, I say maybe Americana, maybe you're starting to see a little bit more pop than anything. But like dude, like we're about to talk song by song, and this record is crazy punk rock. But there's
Yeah.
also a lot of other influences that not lots of other, but there's a couple of things that I heard that I'm going to bring up here in a little bit.
It's eclectic, but to your point, and that's what's so great about it, and so great about it being on Epitaph is like they got to the dance with punk rock. Like they did not necessarily make the compromises to get there. Maybe did they enhance and embellish some of that stuff once they got to those later albums, and that's where they sort of again were injected more into culture and had that and had a part of that.
Right.
Absolutely, but it's not like those records also are not filled with mostly punk rock songs. Like I never get the impression that the Offspring didn't go into the studio without the intent to write a punk rock record. Like that seems to be their MO on just about every album they've made.
Well, I think that a lot of people have these weird definitions of what you can and cannot do as a punk rocker. And I think it's just, I think of what kind of punk rock, that is an argument you can have, but is it punk? Yes. Now, are they punk rockers? I would say no.
Well, and on that, Ian Woodward expands in his book. He always says, "Here's the funny." He made a weird distinction between the Green Day and the Offspring. He said,
"Okay,
Green Day were punks who didn't necessarily make punk music, is the way how it was thought of. Like they were punk rockers who hung out at Gilman. They were, they were in the scene. Just their music was not necessarily punk rock. Whereas the Offspring were guys who made punk rock music, stuff that was no different than like Pennywise or these other guys, but they themselves were not necessarily punk rockers. They just kind of came from different parts of town. So there's always been this weird kind of tension with that. So that's why I think again when they're presented on the world stage, the way like I think like Blink-182 and Green Day are presented as something of punk rock, so to speak, where Dexter and those guys are just kind of presented as those guys, or maybe the jokes, the kind of jokester guys. So there's a lot of contrast there.
Noodles comes off like a punk rock dude. Like he probably is into the stuff that we're into. But yeah, I think that a lot of the band they're more like SoCal dudes than they are punk rock guys. Like they fit in with Red Hot Chili Peppers types, things like that, and that's okay.
Yeah,
I'm not talking shit. I'm just making an observation.
And I should say all those punk rockers, like it's not like Fat Mike and Tim and all these necessarily say any bad things about it. In fact, it's the opposite. They're all very friendly with all of those people. They just like weren't like even like Bad Religion. Greg Graffin claims that like Bad Religion doesn't have like a gimmick or an image, but they do. Like it's not as deliberate as those other bands, but they do. The Offspring, as their personalities, really don't, other than just knowing Noodles and that like funny name and the way he plays guitar. They really don't have like a thing that way as far as like personality. That like their songs have a lot of personality, but they are not really a cult of personality band either. And that was apparently early on by intention. They were a little bit older. They were
really?
Yeah, they were noting a lot of what Green Day kind of going through like the rock star paces, and they kind of didn't feel like they would be very good at that or necessarily serve them. That's why the Come Out and Play video is intentionally shot the way it is. Like it's shot, they spent a lot of money on it. Brett spent a lot of money, but they shot it kind of indie style. Just so like
interesting.
They figured like, maybe we're a little bit older. We're not like the pretty like teens and stuff like that, but we're definitely catering to that market and that kind of thing. So they, they kind of put that guardedness up. Now, once they get to Americana, they are everywhere. They are very much presenting themselves. But early on, they were aware of like the punk rock backlash and all this stuff. These are not dumb guys. That's the thing. They may not have been in the scene, but they're not naive and they're not unintelligent in the way they approach a lot. I mean, Dexter's a freaking PhD. Like these are pretty smart dudes here.
Well, that's what I was going to say was that's kind of their MO there. That they're like kind of smart guys. God damn! Can you hear that dog barking?
Dog barking, yeah. Dog's got a lot of Offspring opinions.
Yeah, he does. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. We got neighbors doing some stuff, and the dog is outside just trying to talk to him. It just happens that he's right next to my window, and I was like, I kept hearing it. I was like, "What is this fool doing?" And he's just bouncing. I can tell you what he's doing, bouncing back and forth, barking and wagging his tail. He just wants to play. But he's
outside.
he's a kind of a big dog. So, okay, how do I want to start this? Let's start with the almighty question here, dude.
Okay.
Is this the most important punk rock record of our generation? Is Offspring Smash the most important punk rock record of the 90s through now?
I don't know that you can really. It's just hard because like I don't know if I would definitively put it as more important than Dookie, but it is pretty like. But you also like neither one really exists without the other. Like, and they literally come
Yeah.
out in February. Dookie comes out, and then April
Right.
Smash comes out. I think those are probably, in terms of individual releases, those are probably the two most important individual releases in punk history. Now, I think it's a twofold thing. So Dookie raises all boats, undoubtedly. Like
Okay. Yeah.
indies, you know, get a boost because of Dookie and all that. But Smash was done on an indie. Like so that birthed, I think, so much like infrastructure into punk rock that made it more than a trend. And this is something that Brett was spoke about. He said once Smash came out, it was the first time he as Epitaph was able to how did he say it? That the stores would be able, he would sell directly to the stores. And I you probably know
That's wild.
a little bit more about that. So he said back in the day, punk labels had to sell to these middleman distributors,
Distribution.
the one stops
Yeah.
they would call them. As a result, you got to jack up the price a little bit at your
Right.
indie record shop. So that's why you, excuse me, your record might be a few more bucks. You know, your punk record is a few more bucks. Well, with the
Oh, I know
record
all
like,
about that.
yeah, record like Smash, everyone just wanted it in your store because it was such a big selling record. So it changed that whole business model where he was able to go like direct to these guys, and they were able to charge the same price at you would get at a Walmart, which that was crazy. You also had a punk record like at a Walmart, but also they could go into your shop and get it for the exact same price. So it switched the leverage of that. It really built a lot of infrastructure underground, and I think that may make it just more important because I think like Dookie was good for the time period and definitely rose a lot of boats and helped raise the Offspring. But this actually built like an infrastructure, and it made, you know, other bands be able to do things on the independent level. If you look at how they broke up or they broke apart, it didn't have anything to do with Brett not being able to do this and being able to make this happen. And so he was able to do that. It took a lot. It was an overextension, but it's a pretty unprecedented amount of sales. Like no one was ever going to get this amount of sales again
Right.
either. But Rancid was able to go platinum the next year. That doesn't happen without this album. That, you know, that births that and helps carry it. And Epitaph is still the biggest indie in the world to this day. So this album is still a force just in popular music alone. So I think we have a pretty good case for it being the most important punk record of our world for sure.
Okay, so let me answer on my end, and then I'll explain myself as well. I would also agree that yes, it is. It's going to burn a lot of people up, but it's fine. I've never been one to shy away from my opinion and explain it. So here's my explanation as to why. Because, well, first off, all the stuff that you said was absolutely, without a doubt, true. Okay, so getting it into the indie stores at a price point people could afford helps independent record stores stay open. That's a major deal. Also, it's major for independent stores that bring in punk rock music that Walmart wouldn't bring in. That record brings kids in there. They can sell more records of other kinds, of other bands, all that stuff. I also say, and like next to Green Day, if you put Dookie and Smash, I was always of the thought that Green Day Dookie was a pop punk record, but Smash was a punk rock record. I think some people would argue that, but if you go listen to them next to each other right now, Offspring is a far more just punk rock record than Dookie, and there's nothing wrong with either of them. And there's nothing wrong with it.
Nobody would dispute that. Like that is, I think, fairly objective.
Oh, you think people would agree with that?
Yeah, I think
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
I think Dookie's a pop punk record. Like you can argue Dookie is a punk record, but I think if you put it on a spectrum of punk to pop punk, you would say pop punk. And I think Offspring Smash has a lot of pop punk in it, and skate punk is a derivative of pop punk, but it is.
Oh, I was gonna say it might have some skate punk, but I don't think it has very much, if any, pop punk in there. Dude, I listened to that record a few times.
It's closer though on the punk rock spec. Whatever we would hold over here as like the punk rock part of the spectrum, I think it would be closer to that, much closer than I think the guys who made it. I don't think that's necessarily controversial. Now, what might be controversial is the value you assign to those things. You know what I mean? That.
Well, okay, so the value I would assign to that is that we're talking about the most important punk rock record, not pop punk. It and that's semantics. That's going to get people angry. It's going to make people laugh. It's going to make people roll their eyes.
Mhm.
It's just a conversation. I don't care either way, really. But it did enable us to do a couple of things. We were able to get, like you said, the Rancid success, which obviously is very important to me. It, I guess, inflated and nourished an entire label for, I would say, probably indefinitely. It also helped with something that a lot of folks don't think about, man. Nitro Records was owned by Dexter. Without the money from Smash, go look at the records that came out on Nitro Records from 1994 to like 2004.
I've got a problem.
Thank you. That is exactly what I was fixing to talk about.
Oh.
I don't think we would have AFI the same way we have AFI if it wasn't for the Offspring Smash.
From a influence standpoint, by the way, because there's a ton of this Offspring stuff in that early AFI stuff. But also, and it's funny, so it's great because there's the falling out that like Brett and Dexter had, which was a clear motivation of how he wanted to sort of make his own indie, that he wanted to do things a little bit different than Brett.
Yeah.
And even off of that, if you talk to Davy's got issues with how Dexter ran that. And I find like that's funny, but it also birthed it. Like it wouldn't have existed with that. Also, TSOL comes out on Nitro. And then the Vandals in this similar thing, kind of like Fat Records, where No Effects, Fat Mike had Fat Records, but No Effects wasn't on it. The Vandals in their 90s revival happened on Nitro Records. It was all the band. It was some new bands, but a lot of these older bands that Dexter was just a fan of from, old school punk rock that he really revived with Nitro. Man, those Nitro inserts, the black and white ones that come with it, there was so much like education just on those to see who was out there, and Snap. Well, there was a lot of bands out there. It was great.
That records label was much more important than a lot of people would. I wouldn't say like they wouldn't slide them on purpose, but they wouldn't remember how important that record label was.
Yeah, I don't think about it. Like when I think of the indie, until you mentioned, Nitro. Like I don't know why, because AFI is so important to everything that we talk about too. It's their birthplace. We think of AFI more as a Gilman band, I think, a Bay Area band. So sometimes we forget that they actually came through.
Really? I don't. I think of them as a Nitro band mainly because there's two things about Nitro Records there's two reasons why they're, I would say, pretty regularly at the front of my brain. And that is one, obviously AFI, right? There's another band called Ensign. And they have, 2 or 3 records on Nitro. But they were actually how I discovered AFI. They were on Nitro and they're like a hardcore band, but they have one of those albums they have 2 albums that I can think of off the top of my head. One's called Cast the First Stone, and one's called, let's see. These are like really important records to me. I hate that I can't remember the title of the second one. It's been a while since I've listened to it. Let's see. Ensign. Where the hell? Albums. There we go. Oh, the Cast the First Stone came out in 1999, and The Price of Progression in 2001. They even had Direction of Things to Come in 1997. All that is on Nitro Records. And those records are incredibly important to me. So, like, I guess from my perspective, this Smash is so important. Whether I like it or not is almost irrelevant. Like, it's such a monumentally important album to everything from the mid-90s on as far as punk is concerned. Because I'm telling you, there would be different stuff for No Effects, Fat Records, Rancid, Bad Religion, AFI. Dude, just about anything we could think of would be affected had that record not come out and sold what it sold. Because other stuff might have come out and did similar things, but it wouldn't have done what they did. And they wouldn't have got as famous as they got. That means that we wouldn't have got the shows we got. Maybe we wouldn't have got the Warped Tour. Maybe we wouldn't have had this or that. There's a million different things that we could say maybe we wouldn't have had without this record.
Also, Offspring very big into skate culture, and a lot of these Offspring songs were put on a lot of those early surf and skate DVDs.
Yes, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater too.
That were out there. The Offspring were a big part of that, and that was a big part of promoting all of skate punk. The Offspring were on the forefront of all of that. Like the Offspring, yes, pop punk band in the amount of records they ended up selling, but they were not kind of how you would think of these other bands. They were a band that really did stumble into it. Like it's just their third record just hits. Like you like again, and this is no shade on Green Day. Like Green Day went in and they've talked about this. Like it was they had to refine those simple songs came from these big ideas. Like Green Day knew they were going to create a masterpiece of pop
That's
punk.
wild.
Like they were going in there to kind of do that because they had spurned the Gilman thing. They were going to like we're going to do this. Smash literally they booked this producer that was sleeping in his car the first week that they were recording Smash. It was a
That's
punk record.
crazy.
Brett didn't like the initial demos he heard from the Offspring initially, but
really
they kept not on this album, but I'm saying early on he kept on.
Oh, okay.
Then,
I was like, wow.
After the initial album, Brett after they proved themselves, Brett brought him in. They did Ignition. It did what Brett called like punk rock gold, which is like 50,000 or something like that. Like
okay.
So it was as good as like the Pennywise record, but nothing that stood out. Again, low budget. It was the producer though after a week because they came in with the songs mostly done who felt like he had a real good demo on his hand, but that the songs were so good that it could be something. So that guy really had an acknowledgement of it, and he got Brett to fork over more money for them to rent out like a big studio, but like still punk rock, and that they had to be like after hours kind of thing, but like to have the equipment and stuff, and they really hammered all that stuff back out, and the investment obviously paid off. So they, in the middle of the process, they kind of knew they had something, but this was just another record that was going to come out on Bad Religion's label because
I was going to say it was another record that was coming out. That's what it was.
Before this, Bad Religion obviously is doing very well, but that's really what Epitaph was. Epitaph, is one of, at that point, it's a single band label. There's other stuff on it, but it's really Bad Religion's label. That changes and it becomes a punk label with Smash.
Yeah, well,
Smash changes from Bad Religion leaving plays into that, which also very important for Smash. That Bad Religion got to leave the scene, and you still got to have bazillion selling records like this on a label. So all that's key.
Like you were saying, Epitaph started out as a Bad Religion and Friends label. Bad Religion and then ... some friends.
Mm-hmm.
But Bad Religion in all caps. It was like it was their vessel to get them what they needed.
Yeah, there was no distinction really between that. It was just the label that served as Bad Religion.
Right. Yeah. And with Ignition, that album was very much just a typical punk record. I can't imagine what they thought when they heard Smash for the first time, and before it got produced and before they advertised and said, "Hey, this is coming." When he sat down and was like, "Okay, let me hear it," and then they sent it to him. I can't imagine what that was like, bro.
Brett's talked about this. He didn't park his car, so he was sent the tapes, I think, and he was doing it on his drive home. And he just kept listening to it kind of on a loop and didn't park, and then famously went in and told his wife, everything's about to change for us. And he's told that story.
So he knew it.
He knew it when he heard when it was just about done.
That's insanity.
He knew it was at that point. I mean, so then they really promoted it. K-Rock was huge. And so this was the first song though, by Brett and everyone's account, that the first punk song that K-Rock ever played from a punk label outside of one of their punk rock shows. So there's Rodney on the Rock, which played a lot of punk rock on K-Rock, and K-Rock obviously the biggest radio station in LA, making it basically the biggest rock, the most influential rock radio station in the world. Still is actually very influential, even in these days of dwindling radio.
I was gonna say it probably is still pretty.
It's still the tastemaker. If it basically K-Rock approves, and then the rest of everyone else follows. It just sort of tracks.
Wow, that's crazy.
So Brett, again, knowing that this was something he hired, I think it's called like a radio jammer or something like that, like someone basically to really help them push it to radio.
Okay.
Kind of almost payola, almost in a way.
I mean, that's probably what actually happened.
To be straight up, he had never hired that. He brought all that promotion. So Come Out and Play Again was the first song that they recollect that was ever really played by just DJs in the rotation, not just in the punk slot, and it really got hit in the... At night, they'd play like the emerging artists thing of just like local artists and stuff. And it was like number one for a section of time. There's, Fletcher's talked about, like, also he was just flipping through K-Rock and all of a sudden, wait a minute, that's the awesome, like there's punk rock on K-Rock.
Dude, that's
blew
rad.
Everyone's mind. And once it starts at K-Rock, obviously it goes, but they really talk about how like yes, there was that little bit of promotion, but this is also the start of the sound scan era. So
Yeah.
everything was very objectively tracked, and this album it sold enough and was bid to the right people that it got tracked within SoundScan and was competing. By the end of the year, it was the sixth biggest selling record in the world in 1994. Think of the pop music albums that came out in 1994, one of the biggest years in all of music. The year Kurt Cobain passed away, everything and that plays into this as well.
94 is a big one.
So much was going on. It's really the biggest year, I think, in alternative rock history, punk and everything included.
Yeah.
And this was really at the forefront. But then again, as a punk record that grew organically, and the Offspring were pretty unaware of it. They were on tour, I think, supporting Pennywise, supporting NoFX back and forth. Rancid was supporting them. Like, they were just on these punk tours as Smash was building and building and building. So they really were still able to build out that kind of punk credibility, and they took it on the road, and they did all this as it's building out. So it gets to like 120 minutes. Obviously, it gets played
right
there. But again, it leaks into the regular rotation, which Green Day is doing at the same time. So it creates that path. But again, Green Day's on Reprise. Like, Green Day has this major structure behind him. Brett remortgaged his house.
That's crazy, bro.
So they eventually got to the point where they literally couldn't fit in the warehouse because they were trying to meet these orders, because that was the thing. You couldn't fail. Like, Brett couldn't. If Brett failed, that's the other thing. If Brett failed, this would have been a disaster. Like, if this album is slightly less successful, it would be in that bad spot, right? Where it was too successful, and he would have had to, sell or do whatever it is he had to do. And no,
that's crazy,
he
bro.
mortgaged his house, but took out, I think, 3 loans against it. Gets his kids' college savings, like all this stuff.
Ooh.
But didn't seem to have a bunch of worry about it. Like, they knew it was going to be that good. So it was caused the split later, because who really deserves credit for it? All of it. Like, they all kind of, came together. And again, like, the Offspring don't leave till 1996. Like, the relationship eventually went bad, but it took a while. Like, they did well. They had they were on MTV. They had just as well as if you would have been on a major. Like, there's nothing really they didn't really do for them, or they didn't accomplish that like that wouldn't have also been accomplished over there. And talk about like a lesson that's set for like Fat Mike of being like, screw that. Look what Brett did for them. Why am I going to go to Hollywood Records and be the 5th or 6th most important punk band over there when this guy over here can do this for me? And then I, in turn, am going to do it for Lagwagon and No Use for a Name and all these guys. So it, again, super important. Just what an important record.
One thing that I know very little about, yeah, dude. I mean, yes, it is so important. I don't know that you can put I don't know,
Like
actual figure.
Yeah. So because there's other things you'll think of and like, oh yeah, that's because
right.
Smash.
And so, but I think that you could probably for the Green Day Dookie album. I also want to be very clear about the fact that I think Dookie is up there right next to it, like not next to it, but like right below it, because like you said, dude, it lifted everything. It wasn't just an album that came out and did really well. It changed music as well. But I think the Offspring for punk rock, this album is a little more important. Okay, my next question before we get into song specifics would be, I don't know much about their beef with Epitaph. Why did the Offspring leave Epitaph?
Okay, so it seems to have been, in the long run, really a lack of communication, but it was
shocking.
It was really over credit and control. So what it was as the label was growing and growing and growing, and he's having to he made the side deal with Rancid and all of that. They had got wind that Brett was either going to sell the Offspring's catalog or sell the whole label, obviously, to, basically sell the label. And their perspective was with it like, wait a minute, we can do this on our own. Like, we can sign to a major. We have the biggest independent thing of all time. Why do we want, we want to pick the label we're going to go to. If he sells out to, I don't know, whoever, say Universal or Maverick, or like, now we're stuck on that label. So they were, and Brett always claims that he was never going to do that, because once he got Smash out, the label was secure, that he was just meeting with these label heads. Now, it's also a thing of, they were mad at, like, he was doing, so Brett was so in demand, like Brett's in all these business magazines and all this stuff as a result of everything that happens with Smash. So they kind of got a little bit of cult of personality from him. And again, and his ego is growing. So there's a little bit of that when
Okay.
they built this again. Like who really deserves credit? It's hard to say. Now, in Brett's defense, he says they were attempting to break their contract. They owed one more record. That's what it was. So they actually owed one more record, and by that point, the Offspring didn't really think that it was necessarily enforceable if it really got to it. But it turned into this thing where eventually they just got so mad at each other over these miscommunications. They're like, did Brett try to sell him? I don't know. Like he claims he didn't, but they obviously have to. Were they annoyed with him with that? Yeah. Did they also owe him an album? Yes. Like all of those things are true. It sounds like a thing where they really just could have, if they could have kind of come to the table, they probably could have really figured this out and done it, in a better way. I think eventually what happened is Columbia bought out the rights to the third record. So Epitaph did benefit from that financially, I think, and they are on some version. They were considered like a co-distributive, but like all of that, went away. And like they never had really, they've said they've dropped their beef because it was so long ago and they all went on to really successful things. It's not like any of them really made a bad decision here,
right.
But like they never really reconciled it either. It was one of those things of two sides got apart. But if you like go back, I have an issue of Rolling Stone where they're taking shots at each other. Like, Dexter says, why would I be on an indie when people on the indies are more evil than the people in the major? Like they are really like, why would I be on a crappy indie? Like
wow.
it's a totally different thing than Green Day, who had no problems with Lookout. Like Green Day just literally, they said like they couldn't get their albums into stores was the thing about Green Day.
No, Green Day didn't have a gripe. They had a goal.
Yeah. And again, and even Larry Livermore, who he always said like, I wish I could, how come I couldn't have been, we could have been Brett and done this. You really couldn't have. What Brett did was pretty unprecedented. So like, I also get the ego that Brett has. So really, and Dexter and Noodles have both said that if they could all kind of sat in a room, hammered it out, figured out what was actually true, what was going on, the split probably does happen, but it would have been way more of a
more amicable.
Split. Yeah. Brett also fell back into drugs in the mid 90s and that is part of it too. So I think as the ego was growing, that was affecting the relationship.
That's not good for any relationship. So.
Right. And think of it like you take the Offspring out of it, it's still probably a crazy business when this band Rancid is going platinum on you. NoFX has Punk and Drublic coming out. Pennywise, right. Everything's going. The Warped Tour is happening. So there's still a lot going on. I think it was just too much success, really. That's what it was. It was too much success.
Well, that makes everybody a little more egotistical and a little more, honestly, probably a little more on edge too, because you're thinking like, oh, I'm about to get stabbed in the back and da 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 da. Like that's a real fear. When you get famous like that, bro, you start to fear everything, man. I've read a lot of stories, listened to a lot of what would you call it, where people testimonials about people that had like, oh no, man, when I wasn't doing that good, everything was fine. As soon as I was doing good, I couldn't trust nobody. Everybody was trying to get something from me. It was all about, watch your back versus we're all trying to get somewhere. So my thought process on that would be then if that's why they split and that was Offspring's beef, then they had absolutely no right to be mad because you signed a contract saying that you would do these records. Whether you get big or not, are you going to get just as mad if you don't sell shit and then he wants to sell your record to your catalog and you're going to profit off of that? So let's reverse it. You didn't sell no records. He lost his ass on it. Now he wants to sell it to Columbia to try to recoup some of the investment. Now, are you still going to be pissed off? No, of course not. So shut up and do what you were supposed to do. I'm a man of the people, bro. But the people need to do what the people say they're going to do. I'm also a man of principle. If you tell me you're going to do something and then you just don't do it, why would I want to be your friend still? Now you can come to me and ask me, and maybe they did ask him, but he had every right in the world to just say, well, no, it doesn't. It behooves me to stay in this deal and to talk to these label heads because what he was talking to him about is none of our business. Those were closed door meetings. So, just because
he alleged that they claim they asked for a stake in the company too. I need to throw that in there.
Well, what business do they have of asking for that?
But they have categorically denied that as well. And he says now he doesn't remember ever saying that, even though it's on the record that he said that. So
wow.
I'm just saying that to put context to every. Yeah. So this is really like it reminded me of like a couple of years ago the New England Patriots broke up because they had too much success. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what that reminds me of just like everyone when everyone actually deserves all the credit. Like sometimes power dynamics are good in these ways. You know what I mean? Like playing your role, doing your thing, and kind of that's sometimes good.
It's
whenever
weird, man.
You're both very much contributing to a very successful thing, and in this case, unprecedented. Like this had never happened before, and it did here. Like think of all the history of punk rock we talk about, and the Ramones and the Pistols, and all of that precedes this. This is the first time it ever actually happened.
Right.
It wasn't Nevermind. It wasn't long. It was
bro.
This.
Ramones didn't get close to this. The Sex Pistols didn't get close. Like not even sniffing it, bro. It's funny too because, yeah, I don't know. It's. I don't want to keep talking about it because we're going to start talking in circles. But I did appreciate the conversation. I did learn something from you because I didn't understand why they ever split. I thought it was a like amicable. We're going to go here. They're like, okay, good luck, man. No, it was a real.
It was beef, like I don't have it here, but there's a cover of a magazine. It was 1996. Metallica was on the cover, and the little thing, Offspring versus Epitaph, like on the cover of Rolling Stone.
No
magazine.
shit.
Like that's how it was. And again, like think about it, like how much support did the Offspring probably really get in that? That might be why they've been sort of put to the side bin because who's going to come off like the good guy in all of that, especially to people like you and I? It's going to be Brett. Like I'm more empathetic, like I think to the Offspring side than. Maybe you are, but like your points are all valid. Like I'm not like you are wrong. I see it from their perspective.
To their side, I get it, but still didn't.
I think if it ever got
agreed on,
if it ever got litigated, I think Brett was right.
What just bothers me is that I feel like that happens a lot where somebody agrees to help you out, and the stipulation had nothing to do with whether or not you got big. Because if you didn't get big and they lost their ass, you're not going to go then offer them some money. You're not going to go and offer Brett some of the money that he just spent. If he lost, let's say he lost $1.5 million and your record flopped, are you going to now go get second jobs, start side project bands, go tour, save up some money and go, hey man, I know you spent 1.5 on us. Here's a third of that, man. Here's $500,000, dude. We're sorry we couldn't help you out. No, you're not. So why is it when you get big, you still signed it? It's like you can't. Now, is there room for renegotiations? Absolutely, and I would imagine he would have been open to some of that. Maybe not.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's why it's really a failure of like communication more than anything.
Right,
when you really look about it, that's what it was. Because that's what he probably just would have probably sold them at a better deal than probably what they got because they would have been all on that page. Or you know, we've seen in the past where a band will give a live album to an indie label, you know, in the middle of their cycle. You know, like there definitely would have been a way to.
Hey Brett, can we get out of our deal with you if we drop a live album and an EP over the next couple of years? If we can get that in our deal with these guys, I think they'll be okay with an EP and a live album. What do you think? You know what? Screw it, man. Go there and get even bigger. Drop the as a matter of fact, do the EP first as the you know sayonara, and then drop a live album in the next 12 to 18 months, bro. I think he'd have banged out some money doing that. It takes conversation though. It takes communication. That's a weird scenario, man. That sucks, dude.
Yeah, and and again, they speak friendly of each other, even though I don't think they've ever really talked. You know,
that's insane to me. Well, let's talk about some specifics. We got a few minutes still. Let's talk about some songs. Okay, this is what I vote we do.
Okay,
I'm gonna just read my notes, and I'd like you to respond to them. How does that sound?
That sounds good.
All right, man. So Smash. My first thing I wrote down: could do without the silly intro. Like. I hate
it's part of the
Offspring.
It's part of the Offspring's albums, though. I think it's one of their things. Yeah.
So while I said that, I also recognize that you are correct. That is part of their thing. So I have to just accept it. But if it were up to me, I would get rid of all of that off of all of their records because I hate it. Okay. Nitro, Youth Energy, first official song on the record. I put this song is a banger. Offspring and AFI really started, or at least perfected, this particular brand of fast, melodic, almost brooding and dark skate punk / hardcore.
Yeah, it's just that sort of like minor chord sounding, but really, really fast, and it has that. It's got like a growl to it. I like the way Dexter's voice really contrasts with that pace and that thud, and Nitro Youth Energy, and like all of these songs are about like this, like living in California or being like angry punk rock kid. Like those are the two subject matters on every one of these songs, and this is angry punk rock kid for Nitro.
Well, but those two bands really did do the whoa that thing. Like
Fat Mike climbs it in a song,
put it like with a devil lock.
Fat Mike on the 46 songs that never made it. He said, we don't need any more woes. And his line is between AFI and the Offspring. I don't think we need any more woes. And no
Oh,
more, and it said no more, nah, nah, nah. It's like a funny, jokey song, but he
I
mentioned
mean,
the AFI and Offspring.
he hit the nail on the head with that.
Yeah, for sure.
So after that song though, you have something that's like monumental. You have Bad Habit, and I
Mhm.
wrote down, blew my mind when I first heard it. Listening to it in my car right now in traffic is like, of course, LOL, because that's exactly what I was doing. When this one picks up at about the 1 minute mark, it's unparalleled. It's amazing melody. The lyrics we can all relate to. It's fast but still catchy. Very much a circle pit type song as well. Very angst filled teen and young adult screaming, "Yo, stupid, dumb shit, damn motherfucker." And then you just drive fast. This song is so iconic. It's got that, "you stupid dumb." I mean, dude, bro, that part right there. How many people have you heard scream that? Thousands, dude. I have heard
Mm.
thousands of people. When I was graduating high school, that's something people wouldn't realize I did. I dropped out of high school and I went back to get my
Breaking
diploma.
news. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't really talk about that part of it, man. I went back to get my diploma. I had to do a work program. I didn't do it the typical way
Mm.
you would go to high school and get it. Like, as a matter of fact, my high school, I was the first person to do that. I was the first person to get a work program and get a diploma. So I had really bad learning disabilities when I was young, man. Really, really bad. But when we were having our what do they call it? Like a faux graduation, where they were like, everybody come hang out. We're gonna do like a little party, and then we're gonna just kind of see how people interact. We're gonna see how many people we can get on this field. I think they were just kind of practicing things, right? They had a DJ there, and I remember they were playing all of these songs. They played a bunch of Dookie. They played a bunch of The Offspring. They played a bunch of Nirvana. They even played. I think that I'm pretty certain they played Time Bomb. Because this is in like, dude, this is like years after this record came out. This is in like 2000, 2001. But when they played The Offspring, they played Bad Habit, and I remember you could hear that white noise of people talking, and then when it got to that part, almost the entire crowd stopped and screamed that, and then it was muted during the curse words, but you could hear the high school entire class scream it all. It was amazing. I laughed about that for like an hour. It was awesome. It was so cool.
For their first ever TV appearance, I think it was like they turned down Saturday Night Live, and so I got like, again, they were not gonna, they didn't think their songs would sound good on there. And their one negotiation when they got on, like, it was like the Billboard Music or something, was that they get to pick whatever song they were going to play, and they played most of Bad Habit. Everyone wanted to play, come out and play, and they played Bad Habit, and it was just it was a psychotic performance where, network television, they're trying to keep up the beeps. That's what made me think of it when he said every 5 seconds.
Dude,
there.
It was wild.
This is the one I assumed was like a single, but no, radio just kind of played it. But
Wait, that wasn't a single?
It not really. It was a well-liked song, but I don't think it was released as a single. This is exactly the song I was talking about. So, like, in my head, though, like, "Come Out and Play" was probably like on Americana when I was a kid. Like, I just assumed like it was on that record. It's a big Offspring song because the alternative radio just played that. Whenever they played Bad Habit, it was always like Saturday afternoon, when every now and then you get like kind of not deep cuts, but stuff that isn't currently like on the radio.
No, weekends. Yeah, weekends are the deep dives.
Yeah, and always on the weekend, I remember Bad Habit, and I'm always like, it's almost like there's like a preacher quality to it. The way Dexter starts out with the kind of acapella thing, do 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 do. The song sounds psychotic, and the music matches that sort of like almost like mental breakdown. Traffic jam. The way what it's doing, the mood is just perfect the way it's set there.
You know the part where he goes, "When I go driving, I stay in my lane," and then it goes dot 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 dot. There's that part right when he goes, "Stay in my lane." Right underneath that is the drums, and it comes in and goes dot 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 na 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 na. I really liked, like you were saying, the acapella leading into the music part. We're gonna sound ridiculous doing this on an audio platform. Sorry, folks. But yeah, man, dude, that song was shockingly good even now. I was surprised at how much I liked it. After that, though, we have "Gotta Get Away." I wrote down very short notes on this one. I'm forgetting how much I actually like this album. The chorus to this is one of my favorite things. A top 10 Offspring song, maybe. The song is so good. That's a bold declaration. That it is a top 10 Offspring song. That song is so good.
Yeah, it's been covered by like a million people. Though
Has it really?
Yeah, I mean, like Five Finger Death Punch has a freaking cover.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah, that's how wide the song is spread.
Speaking of like random band, like I don't know what you'd call it, like things they have in common. So Matthew Cotty from Monster Squad, who did my show recently, we were talking on the phone the other day, or like via text, and he said something about, "Oh, I'm surprised nobody's brought up the fact that I'm the one punk rocker in the Papa Roach Last Resort video." And I'm like, "Ha ha 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 ha!" And then like 10 minutes later, I was like, "Wait, are you
Oh
serious?"
shoot, man.
Yeah, he's like, "Yo, those were like our friends back in the day, man. Then we did a bunch of shows with those guys." Man, it blows my mind, bro. But it gives you reason to like stop talking crap about some of these like new metal or like radio rock bands, because dude, they're probably cool guys. Like, what? Why are we being so snobby? And then on the same coin, other side, I'm like, yeah, screw that shit. Like, I just don't like it. But I have to be able to understand that. Like, do we meet people from all walks of life, and cool people are everywhere. So you don't have to be punk rock to be rad. Clip that shit and use it. Next, we got Genocide. I put, hell yeah, the song absolutely rips. Maybe the best song on the album, actually. I may have to amend my top 10 list. This is absolutely a punk rock album. Anyone that disagrees is just flat out wrong. It's an amazing album. It's amazing an album this raw and angry sold so many copies. This is the bridge between like street punk albums and Nirvana's Nevermind.
Yeah, the dog eat dog. Who made who? Like that's
Yeah.
just straight up punk song.
On our fellow men we pray, dog eat dog. I love that because I also like a book called Dog Eat Dog that's really important to me. So there's like this like weird connection there. And then we have Something to Believe in. Great vocal harmonies and melody, driving snare drum, and an excellent breakdown. I don't remember this album banging so hard, to be honest. Dude, I was like perplexed the whole time listening to this, dude. Like, I was shocked at how much I was absolutely loving this record.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because the popular songs, I think, are the ones that I don't really care as much about.
Well, we're about to get into the
next up is Come Out and Play. I put a glimpse into the future of what this band would bring to the table. Almost a silly song like some of their later singles. Not really one I like too much, but I don't hate it. The lyrics are great, though. I'd love to hear a remixed and mastered version of this album. The highs are a little piercing at times, and the vocals a little too upfront. But that's just me nitpicking. It's overall very good. The song, could take it or leave it. I don't really care for that song.
Yeah, and it's just hard to judge it, right? Because it's been so prominent. And I was listening, like the lyrics are pretty awesome, and I talked about it before. It was Dexter driving to USC and just looking at driving through Compton and stuff, and just sort of being the observer, and that's what the story is of. But there's a lot of things, like keep them separated, and then using the like the Asian scale on the like India style, like there was all those things that if you read about it. Like that song took a long time. Like there was a lot of everyone was debating it. Like I think Noodles didn't understand why they were doing a song that wasn't like a punk song, like in that sped up kind of way. And it was Dexter who was like, "No, this will be better if it's slowed down. It'll make." And Dexter, was proven to be right. And I think the producer wanted the guy to do the voice. Like there was a lot of frustration with this song to turn it into what it is. But this is the song. It's not even really a punk song. I remember in the Rolling Stone referred to it as their metal punk song, and I don't hear the metal in it. It's got some other kind of influences.
Well, that's what I meant by the bridge between street punk and Nevermind. That the very middle of that is this song.
Yeah,
if you take a street punk song and you mix it with Nirvana, you get this song.
Well, okay, so everything else on here sounds 90s in the way that like 90s skate punk is kind of a sound, but again, like it also could have come out in 2003, most of this, and just sounded like an Epitaph record. Come Out and Play, though, sounds very 90s. Now, I don't know if it's so associated with the 90s, but exactly, it's got that.
It's because that's part of why the 90s sounds like it sounds, is because of songs like
this. But you think of think of Teen Spirit. That's a good. Dude, it's that same sort of like driving. It's a little bit. They never. Offspring never really goes to grunge, but they're very much they're very close, very alternative stuff. And look at it. This came out on the 8th of April. 3 days prior to that, April 5th, Kurt Cobain shot himself in the head. So
that's crazy,
is right
bro.
In the context of grunge is huge at that time period. So that's where this sort of takes you away from grunge. This was like the next step, the next evolution of like radio rock outside of grunge.
I don't remember if it was this song or not, but I remember seeing a video with Dexter, and it had like a fisheye lens. He had long braids, sunglasses on, and a flannel. And I thought, man, if this guy was just a little bit more my style, I'd like this band more. And then ultimately I find out that, this is a band I really like.
And think about that. That looks like the Teen Spirit video, right? The way it's shot, shot exactly like that. Yeah. And again, they were being intentionally vague with that. And Dexter with the dreads, man. That was a look, wasn't it?
Oh, so bad. All right, moving on.
Yeah.
Another monumental song was Self-Esteem. I put this song transports me back to 10th grade immediately. That bass line is just so good. Lyrically and musically, this one reminds me of Green Day a little bit. The vocals really set it apart from them. But the vocals really set it apart from them, though. Dexter's woes are so iconic. This damn song still slaps.
It really does. And it's like, again, where I'm a little numb to come out and play. Self-Esteem has always kind of been good. Like it's always just had
Right.
that sort of. And again, I wouldn't say necessarily grunge, but you could see that sort of '90s. Maybe even that's almost like more of a Pearl Jam type of thing than a Nirvana. The way it's a little bit of kind of like a slow alternative song, I would say, is what it is. And there's a lot of music like that in the '90s. And
Well,
so this fits right in with that kind of music.
That's what I think set Offspring apart from other typical punk bands was the diversity in their tempo. Like their tempo could be, I think Rancid has a lot of those qualities. Now they're still a little more punk, obviously, but they still have the ability to change tempo. Whereas a lot of bands, their songs are just like, whole record.
I don't think Pennywise could do these songs, even though Pennywise and Offspring are so similar. But that's like the difference between the two.
Yeah. So, but yeah, dude, Self-Esteem's a great song, man. Then we have It'll Be a Long Time. I put, this right here, another top 3 song on the album, I think. This shit goes so hard. The stop and go riff in the chorus with the drums being continuous is just so good. Very Motorhead-esque. Then this one has a super catchy breakdown too. Fuck yeah, shit. This album may rank higher on their albums list than I had put it initially. Is what I was.
Another solid one. Another good angry song. This album is so like. Well, angry. It's awesome.
It'll Be a Long Time. Like I'm notorious for liking the deep cuts on Offspring albums, and that's another one that I really really like.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Killboy Powerhead. I just don't really care for this song. It does, however, get stuck in my Powerhead.
It's a cover. Yeah, it's a cover by the Digits.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Who's the original?
The Digits. So very obscure punk band.
Huh, I've heard of them. I need to go back and listen to that on their. I bet their version is probably a little bit better then because it's their song.
That was one of the allegations too against Brett, that he had a no covers rule for the Offspring going forward. They alleged that against Brett.
I mean, that song's pretty whack. Okay. After that, though, we have What Happened to You.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I know you have said that you don't care for their like ska type songs.
Yeah. But
this one is their best one. I put, I'm a sucker for their ska songs. This one is probably their best. Okay, yeah, I wrote that. I literally wrote that down. This will round out the top 3 on the album, I think. Plus, lyrically, I love this song. Shows a lot of versatility to their songwriting abilities as well, regardless of if you like it or not.
I think it's done okay. I still think it's the weakest song on this album, though. I really.
Oh wow, there's way more songs I hate that I dislike.
Yeah.
I mean, shoot, dude, the one right before it, I don't like that song. Like I actively dislike it.
See, I would rather listen to Killboy Powerhead.
Yeah.
Than what happened to. Yeah, it's a matter of taste. I mean, it's just
like do that. Hey, I just remember being like a young kid listening to that and just being so like stoked because it was just fun. Yeah. Sometimes I need a song that's fun. Plus the lyrics in that song, though, if you think about it, the lyrics in that song are going to relate to me a lot. Like that song is personal.
That stuff, that third wave ska didn't even exist back then. I think it's 1994. So
right,
like a template for this. Yeah, it's just
right. It's like they're like
no effects. They all just liked Operation Ivy and put.
I was gonna say they felt like doing an Op Ivy type song.
Yeah.
Then they got So Alone. It's like a combination of Killboy and It'll Be a Long Time. Decent enough, but more or less filler in my opinion.
Kind of generic, yeah.
Yeah. Then we got Not the One. I don't remember this song at all. It's a decent enough song, but more filler in my opinion. Not necessarily a skip, but it doesn't stand out to me.
I really liked it.
Really?
I like the lyrics of it. Like, we're not the ones.
Their lyrics are always good.
I've always liked that sentiment, just like in life. Like I always just say, like when everyone hated millennials before we became the old people, like, well, who the bleep raised us? I used to say, like, someone and like, and even now. We always, even I'm guilty of it at my job, especially of just like always hating the youth. And it's always like, that's always the youth cry of like, we didn't actually make this world that you're kind of mad at us for.
Right. Y'all did.
Reacting to it. And the way like, so it's this whole album, I think is very political or not political, but more like social commentary And then
Yes.
it's commented on, and I think not the one is a pretty good example of that. So that's funny. We have a little bit of a difference of opinion at the back end of the album, but we're really splitting hairs though on like songs we don't really care for on this. This is pretty
right. Overall, the
here.
album's only got like 2 songs, maybe 3 that I actually physically wouldn't want on a CD or something. Like if I made a mixtape, most of the record would be on there. We round out the album with Smash, the title track. I put pretty good song, but I wondered why it was chosen as the title to the album. As I read the lyrics while listening to it, I actually get it now. 100% understand. The lyrics are fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Decent breakdown at the end as well. Yeah. So the lyrics to that song are hard to listen to.
My number 1 on the album.
Oh wow! Yeah. Okay.
I really like the Offspring closers that they do. These long sort of epics.
Oh, I hate
that
them.
They do. Yeah, I know you're not as. That's why I was shocked. You said the things about Smash, but again, the lyrics and it's really like an anthem type song. It's a big anthem type song. That's cut in with your little buddy to do his little say goodbye, and then they sort of drowned out the song, and then there's the long section into the part of come out and play that little bit. Of thing. Again, you got to think of CDs. This was made to be pressed onto a CD.
I got a comment about this. So I put, I don't care about the outro any more than the intro. And the weird thing it does at the end, the bonus track or whatever, not really my thing. Feels like the 90s, though. Dumbass hidden track, not really my thing either. But of course, it was on a CD. That's what I put.
Yeah, and like this album was very specifically like pressed for compact. The compact discs were going to be a big part of. And
they even said something about it at the beginning.
Underrated part of the '90s punk explosion. And Fat Mike talks about this. It was more affordable for everyone to press CDs. Like that's actually and the distribution.
Well, the margin was better too. They could make some money finally.
Right. And everything about that. That was a huge part of the technological advances that got this thing, off the ground. But I loved the hidden tracks back in the day. They felt like such a nice treasure that you had. But I hate it when they're on streaming. Like I was listening to, I think it was.
I don't. Yeah, I don't understand that at all.
Just
like
put it on streaming. Just put it at the next song. Like it's not the same. The fun of it is you're kind of driving and you know that it's still spinning and you're waiting. Like that is an experience. Like there's the hidden track on Punkin' Drublick, which again was great.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
But the other day I was listening to it. I guess I thought like my phone died. And I was listening to Punkin' Drublick, and then I was like minding my own business, and it scared the crap out of me when it came out. I had it really loud, and I forgot I was listening to music, so I wasn't like ready to hear loud music, and also it just blasted through the speakers. So
that's funny, bro.
For us old people, these hidden tracks might kill us. So be careful.
April 8th, 1994, man. 14 songs, 47 minutes. I'd say some of that length is attributed to like the 3 minutes of blank dead air at the end. So it's like, let's say 44 minutes about.
Yeah, it's much tighter than that time would indicate.
So it's roughly 3 minutes a song. The first half, I think, is just incredible. The B-side, not quite as strong, but not bad in any stretch of the word. I'd say I'd probably overall rate this album at like an 8.5 out of 10. And I think it's an absolute classic, man. It's a bona fide classic. I think that it's one that we have to, I don't know, revere kind of, dude. Hold it in high regard, man. I think it deserves more respect than it gets. And I think that real quote unquote punk rockers do themselves a disservice by shitting on this, man. Like dude, the Unseen wouldn't have gotten as big as they got without this record, because without this record, you wouldn't have Hellcat. Without Hellcat, the Unseen doesn't do it. There's just so many little trickle-down effects. And people hate when I use that term, trickle-down effects, but they are real. Without this stuff, dude, there are many little tentacles that wouldn't reach out into the ether and touch things that we all love.
And this one's pretty direct, too. Like, there's the trickle-down, and then there's just, like, the actual direct effects of this one, too. So this one really hits on everything. And I'm glad we spent some time on the songs, because like the fact that it is, and so this is the nuance I heard on you debating about the Adele album. This is absolutely the biggest selling independent rock album of all time. So we can put it there, but I still like to say it's the biggest selling independent album at a time when people bought albums and there was competition. This is competing with In Utero and like all of that stuff. And like, this had to compete there, and it did that. Like, again, I'm not trying to trash what the Adele thing is. It's just a different parameter. Like, that's also impressive in the landscape that it existed in.
In Utero, what year did that come out? Was that 94?
late 94? At the end. Man,
I wanted to try to make a.
Well, Cobain's passing is coming up as an anniversary, so.
We can talk about some Nirvana stuff because I don't like that band, so we can make a lot of people real mad. So Adele, I still think whether she was on a small label, independent label, I think is kind of a trick question. It's kind of a dirty little trick because that label was distributed by huge labels. Like the distribution that it had was gargantuan. Epitaph didn't get that until after the Offspring, right?
Right. And
so there's no argument there, man.
It's not like Adele was unprecedented. You know what I mean?
Correct.
As far it's not like singers, and not to say she's not extremely talented, but not like her mold had not existed. Well, the Offspring are literally the first. Like no one had ever done this.
That's another incredibly important point, is that she is a pop star. These guys were literally like dirty punk guys. Like they were like skater punk dudes, like surfer guys from California. They had no business being millionaires. Like, what are we talking about?
Yeah,
it
just kind of.
I mean, they were smart, but
I wouldn't say it randomly happened, because I think a lot of people did a lot of hard work to make it happen. So I want to that, but like it was not. It was an orchestrated thing, like much further in the process of again, pop stars by their very nature have been famous. These punk rock records to sell. That's the thing.
Right.
The Ramones were famous. The Sex Pistols were famous. But actually forking over your $12 to $14 to $16 to put this into your car, like that was the first time this one, in an independent label, had ever been accomplished like that. And that's just, it'll never be accomplished again. There'll never be anything like SoundScan records. They'll never sell like they did in the 90s. And this is a heavyweight of just 90s music. And it comes from our slice of the world, so it's pretty cool.
Pretty crazy, man. It's pretty crazy. So for anybody that's still here with us, thank you so much for your time. Next week we're going to talk about a couple of things. We're going to talk about My Chemical Romance, because 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge turns 20 this year. We'll cover that one probably more in depth later on in the year, but right now we're looking for just exciting topics. We're going to kind of do like a is it punk type of video. Like, is this punk rock? Is it pop punk? Is it emo? What is this and why? And then also, I'm going to always do my track by track, because that's what I enjoy doing, is a track by track breakdown. I think I shine with that stuff. It's kind of something that I do. Not many other channels do that. We're also going to talk about NoFX The Decline. I've been notoriously hating on that my entire life, not because it's bad, but because I don't like the presentation of it. So I'm going to give it a new, I'm going to wash it up and check it out again, man. We're going to see how that one is. And I'm also going to talk about NoFX The Weekend, because I'm going to go to 2 major shows this weekend and get a lot of footage. We're going to have NoFX, which is going to have, dude, who all's playing that show? It's going to be crazy.
You got Codefendants, right? You got
dude. Catbite's opening the show. Let's see.
Is Lagwagon the support?
I think that's who it was. I think Lagwagon is the one I was thinking of. Let's see. Here we go. Final tour. We got the Vandals, Lagwagon, TSOL. Freaking Riverboat Gamblers, dude, let's go. And then Codefendants and Catbite. And then the very next day, I got to drive home from Dallas and go straight past my house back into deep Houston, because freaking Cheshky from Codefendants is actually doing a solo show in Houston the next day with Sister Wife Sex Strike. And I've had both of them on my channel. So I desperately, yes, bro, I can't wait to go see that. Perfect. So, and then Monday is Days and Days. What is happening, dude?
Yeah. Shoot, man.
Dude, Jesse from Days and Days called me the other day, and it blew my mind because it just popped up on my phone. Jesse, Days and Days. And I was like, what's up, dude? Hey, I'm sorry I didn't get back to you on this email. I'm like, oh, bro, it's all right. Like, he's so nice. I love that guy. Dude, shout out to Days and Days for being great. They just put out that new Demos record. We should talk about that a little bit. You don't really care for that kind of music that much, huh?
Yeah, I don't dislike it. I just don't listen to it a lot. So I'd have to.
We might have to talk about. Dude, give that a listen if you get some time this week, dude. It's their latest release. It's a black and white cover of their Blue album, and it's like, I don't know, 12 or 13 songs. It's all demos, but they sound really good. Like, I was shocked that they're demos, quote unquote, because they sound wonderful. But yeah, man, this was a fun episode. I liked it. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Anything that you need to get off your chest? Any ideas you've got?
No. I think we're got our formula now. We're gonna keep rolling. We're gonna have some fun.
Hell yeah.
A very hot take laden episode next week. This is a very serious and analytical episode. We're shooting off the hot takes next week on punk or no punk.
We got dude, we're gonna make some people real happy and some people real sad. So over the next, I think what this podcast is turning into, outside of my guests that I talk to, is like topical and anniversary laden. Like we go for anniversary conversations on important albums that are stuff we love, and then so I'm gonna go through and make out a list of all the albums that are hitting 2025, and maybe I'll even try to do like 10 like 2014 records that I wouldn't even know about necessarily.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And do that, and I'll send you some ideas and you tell me what you think. But this year we're gonna do a lot of that. I'm gonna have a lot of guests on the show. I just did one with the singer of the Casualties and Crumb Bums and Starving Wolves. That one's coming out in about a week. I did one with Harley Poe. I got one with Dropped Out. I think that one's gonna hit the airwaves tomorrow. I got a lot of content coming, man, and I'm actually about 20% through editing the second installment of the Street Punk documentary series.
Nice.
So that one is a lot of work. So my next couple of big projects are going to be like a month or two in between because they just take a long time. So if you have any questions, concerns, comments, or you just want to talk some shit, man, throw it in the comments. Hit me up. All my information is below. Go check out the Punk Odds. I don't know when he's going to get back to regular content, but at some point you're going to want to be subscribed. Nice, dude. That's what I want to hear. Hey, how's the other thing going? The other show? Are you still doing it? Is it
actually going? This is my second podcast of the day because we had to do emergency pod.
Shit!
Some news breaking, and it's a big week in that world. So,
is it wrestling?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You're balls deep in this Vince McMahon drama and stuff, huh?
Oh yeah. And then we had our buddies at the punk rock connection of CM Punk just went on an interview and just basically gave his side of his most recent firing.
The Errol Helwani one?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm a UFC guy, so I know this stuff. There's the connection.
There's a connection. So right now I did a reaction video to like I pulled out important clips and just broke them down.
Cool.
On there, and so if you want to follow me on that is at Brass Ring Media on YouTube. If you're into the world of pro wrestling, I do every Thursday night. We call it the Nocturnal Knockout, and it's basically like sports talk radio meets like wrestling talk. And that's why I changed up the appearance of the vibe here, kind of like a feed up kind of thing. But this week, if you're into that kind of thing, we are on there all week pumping out content. It's WrestleMania week, so it's kind of a good time to grab.
WrestleMania is this week.
Grab the viewers, yeah. So that's why we're kind of focused on this. I'm glad we're going to give you hot takes about 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge next week because it'd be kind of a hard week for me to do a deep dive.
Well, I'm gonna go check out your channel. I totally forgot to do that. I spaced out on it, so just subscribe to it. Hit my notifications on there. I will go check out that video because if nothing else, I'm gonna make time to support my homies. But don't hang up quite yet. I got something to tell you off air. Everybody else, thank you so much. Hey, coming soon. 30 years of Let's Go. Are you freaking kidding me, dude? 30 years next year. 30 years of an Out Come the Wolves, bro. I kind of just can't wait for 2025 so I can talk about Out Come the Wolves again. Let's go. Well, no pun intended. Anyways, man, everybody, y'all have a great night. See you next week. Peace.